Hello, and welcome to the tutorial for ChunkyOSC. In this tutorial, we're going to be covering how to set up an avatar and how to control it using the client. To start, I have an avatar here that is ready to be uploaded and has VRCLens on it for ChunkyOSC to control. First, you're going to want to import the package. Once you've done that, you should see this new ChunkyOSC folder. Open it up, and you'll be presented with what hopefully looks like this. For this tutorial, we're only going to be using these two files here, so you can ignore everything else. For now, drag avatar setup into your scene. If you haven't used one of my tools before, you're going to need the clone BNB libraries for certain things to work correctly. You can either go and download this from my GitHub manually, or just click this button to do it for you. Once it's finished cloning, your inspector should look like mine here. I'm going to quickly go through these settings, and then we'll set up ChunkyOSC on this avatar. Active avatar is the avatar you want to add ChunkyOSC to. Expressions menu is what menu you want the controls added to. If you leave it blank, it'll make its own and set it as your main. But since we have a main menu, I am going to select it here. There we go. Plugins are to add extra features for ChunkyOSC or to do some extra setup manually. Included are World Object and VRCLens. World Object, if you want to control a specific object in the scene, you can drag it into this slot and it will be set up so whenever the client's connected, it will control that object. However, this tutorial, we're just going to be using VRCLens since that's set up on the avatar already. How VRCLens works is whenever the camera is dropped in-game and the client is connected, it will take control of the camera and you can control it from within Unity. The destination is where any created files will go. To change it, just click the text. I'm going to go ahead and put it into my avatars folder. We're going to go ahead and make a new one called OSC. And select that. If you don't see it appear immediately in the inspector, or sorry, in the project window here, you're going to want to just refresh because sometimes Unity can't tell when you've added a new folder, and it's weird. And then lastly, we have write defaults here. If your avatar absolutely requires it, you can go ahead and check this. However, VRChat themselves recommend you keep this off. So that is the default. For this avatar here, it doesn't require write default, so I'm going to leave it off. Once you have the settings set up how you want them, you can just click add to avatar to add it. Once it's done, you can click close and the avatar is set up. I'm going to go ahead and upload this, and then I'll see you in game. Alright, here we are in game. I've went ahead and swapped into the avatar already. So the first thing you want to do is open your radial menu, go to Options, OSC, and make sure that this says Enabled. If it doesn't, nothing's going to work. If this is the first time you've enabled OSC on this model, go ahead and skip to the next chapter or to this timestamp you should see on screen right about now. Otherwise, stay here because there's an extra step we're going to have to do if you've used OSC on this avatar before. Okay, so if you've used OSC before, you probably know that if anything is to be accessible by OSC, it must be listed in a certain file that's created for each of your avatar IDs. Included with the package is this file named OSC settings. Go ahead and open that up as I've done here in a text editor. And then you want to go to this address here on screen and find the file for your avatar ID. Once you've found it, you'll know because the name should be the name of your avatar here. And inside should be a list of all your expression parameters from when you first used OSC. Because this is a fresh model, I'm already going to have them here, but you need to make sure that every parameter listed in here is listed in your list for the avatar. So you can see here we have should be in here somewhere. I probably passed it, and I did. So we have ChunkyOSC, ChunkySync, ChunkySize, ChunkyPolarZ. You just need to make sure they're all here. That way OSC has access to all the things it needs to for ChunkyOSC. Once you've done that, just save the file and reload your avatar, and OSC should be able to access all the properties. I should mention that if you feel the need, you can remove the output field on any of the properties that don't have one in the specified list. There are a few that require it, but for all the other ones that don't, they are unused, and it is safe to remove them. After that, now we can go ahead and use the client. But first, as I mentioned earlier, if you're using the VRCLens plugin, you're going to need to first enable and drop the camera if the client is going to do anything to it. So there we go, I've dropped it. And now we need to switch back into Unity for a moment. Now we're going to want to go ahead and open up the client here, included in ChunkyOSC. So when you load the client, you should see this scene here. You're going to want to open up ChunkyOSC on the left in the hierarchy and click on Controller. I'm going to drag this out a bit. Like before, if this is the first time you're using this in the project, you're also going to need to install OSC Core in order to use OSC in Unity. When that gets done, the inspector should look like this. Before we start using the client or talk about the other settings, I want to briefly cover what the extra parameters are. So if you have other things on your avatar accessible to OSC, you can add them to this list here and also control them using the client. You just need to give the name of the parameter, case sensitive, what type it is, and then you'll be able to control it using the setting on to the right. You can control this via animation, by hand, using some other script. Your choice. If you have several avatars set up that use different lists of extra parameters, you can save them as presets and swap between them quickly. For example, I'm going to just make a quick one here using random values and names. There we go, and then if I call it comfy, and then click save preset, and that will save it. Now in this list, we have one named comfy. If we switch to it, it's obviously not going to change because that's what it is. And there's also one for VRCLens that's included that has the VRCLens stuff. And if we switch back to custom, it will give us a fresh list to work off of. And so, as you probably have just realized, you need to, before you switch to a different preset, make sure you've saved whatever you have in custom because it will get wiped upon you returning to it. Any presets you make will be saved in the presets folder down here in the ChunkyOSC, and you can share these with people and as just a text file, and they can put it into their presets folder in order to use them. Whenever you add new presets to this folder, be sure to click off of the controller and click back so that way the list updates. So now we're ready to actually start using the client. We're going to want to use the VRCLens preset, obviously. I'm going to have the zoom radial at 0 just because I don't want the camera zoomed in immediately. Again, make sure if you're using the VRCLens plugin that the camera is dropped in-game, otherwise the client will not be able to use it. And I recommend that you put the game view beside the scene view just so you can see things easier. Anyway, when you're ready to run the client, just hit play in the scene and switch to play mode. You should see the camera jut to a seemingly random position, but it's not. The position of the camera, if you have the client synced, will always be 0, 0 in the world. Well, 0, 0, 0 in the world. And to control it, you just drag around the controller object. So you can see as I lift it up, it will move up and down. You can kind of see it in the mirror in the background if you look here as I go up and down. You can of course move it along any axis. And you can also rotate it however you like. There's roll. There's turning. Camera's kind of at an angle, and I'm using global instead of local. There we go, that's better. That looks more natural. The camera can do flips, although it may look a little weird. Let's see. So let me explain what we're seeing in Unity right now. So if I zoom really far out, you're going to notice this white box around this entire sort of grid plane. This is the boundaries of where you can move. You can move as far as this. If you try and go any farther, it will not let you. You will be stuck against this wall. These are your bounds. If you feel that these are too small for you, you can increase the chunk size in order to give you more room to work with. However, again, for other people looking at the camera, it'll look a bit more jittery as it moves around, the higher this value is. If I zoom back in now, so the smaller blue box is the current chunk you're in. And so if I drag around and leave it, you'll see that it's switching between the different chunks. There are 256 of these in each direction from the center. And that is your movable play area. The size of one grid tile on the ground is equivalent to one chunk. These are all in meters, so if your chunk size is 2, each one of these boxes is 2 meters by 2 meters by 2 meters. And this is also the same in-game. So 2 meters in Unity is 2 meters in-game as well. These boundaries by default are always visible even if you deselect the object. If you only want it to show when it's selected, you can click when selected. And so if I select off, they'll disappear. If you don't want them at all, you can simply just turn off the gizmos. For a bit more practical showcase of this, I'm going to very quickly stop playing and turn on this fly script I've modified. This is not included, but you can find very similar scripts online for controlling the controller. And so if I turn on the script and start playing again, I can now control the camera. Let me, real quickly, just go ahead and click here and do this keybind so you can see it a bit better. And now if I tap back in, there we go. Now we can fly around and do a bunch of stuff. Like, look, it's me. Oh, and that's funny. You can see the menu in the mirror, but not in the... Interesting. But yeah, you can fly around, do whatever you want. You do need to be tapped into Unity while doing this, so Unity does need to be on top somewhere. If you have multiple monitors, this shouldn't be a problem, but if you really need a bit more space, you can go ahead and put the game window and drag it outside of Unity to somewhere like maybe right here. Then you can maximize VR chat and say throw this way down here, and as long as you have this selected, you can still control it. Of course, we also have control of these extra parameters here, and to show that they work, if I drag the slider here, we're now controlling the zoom on the VRCLens camera. Or we can adjust the exposure, or the aperture. Whenever you're done, you can go ahead and stop play mode, and the camera will just remain where it is, which for me was right there. Now, if you don't want it to start at the world origin and you'd rather start it at your feet, you can go ahead and in your radial menu, there is a section for ChunkyOSC. For the VRCL plugin, it's only late sync, but some other plugins have access and can add other controls to this if they need to. But if we turn off sync position, then if we go ahead and start the tool again, you'll see now that the camera actually starts at my feet. I click here. And so now the origin of your space is here instead of the world center. Now when you do this, late joiners will not see it in the correct position, but anyone who is currently in the world and it has your avatar currently loaded should see it in the right spot. There are cases where if you're too far away or the world is doing something weird, they won't see it in the correct place either. But if you ever want to just fix it, you can simply just turn on sync position again. And yes, you can do it while it's running. And then they'll see it in the same spot as you. I should mention about the latency. While locally there is zero latency at all, everything updates pretty much instantly between the client and the game. Remotely, that isn't quite the case. So expression parameters in VR chat sync to other players basically 4 or 5 times a second. And so, as you can imagine, that's basically the camera's going to be moving in about 5 FPS for them. You can apply smoothing to fix it up, but that isn't included by default in case some people want this behavior. There are several tutorials online on how to make something follow a position smoothly in VR chat, and so I would recommend watching those. And again, whenever you're done using the client, you can just exit play mode to stop. And then if you want to return the camera or the VRCLens back to you, you can just turn off drop. And I'll follow you again. And that's it. You should now be able to set up ChunkyOSC on your avatar and control it using the client. If you have any issues or questions that I didn't cover in this video, you can leave a comment down below or send me a message on Discord using my tag in the description. If you want to message me, you'll have to be in the official VR chat server, so that way we share a server. This is just to reduce spam for myself. I may not respond on the same day, but I'll get back to you within the week. Thanks for watching, and enjoy.